Over the break, President Trump endorsed Speaker Johnson. Johnson was indeed reelected on the very first vote out the gate. According to the New York Times, Speaker Johnson on Friday won reelection to the top post in the House, salvaging his job in a dramatic last-minute turnabout by putting down a revolt from conservatives who initially voted to block his ascent. Johnson won 218 to 215. He mustered the majority with help from President-elect Donald Trump, who again, Trump is going to be absolutely utilitarian in his second term. He wants wins. He wants to chalk up wins on the board. That is the thing that he wants more than anything. He is not concerned with the sort of petty ideological squabbles that you are seeing inside the Republican caucus right now. All he wants is victory for the country. He wants to leave a legacy in his second term, even more successful than his first term. Originally, there were 3 Republicans who opposed Johnson and 6 more who had abstained. And then Trump came in like a hammer in favor of Johnson. Johnson and Trump had both urged Republican lawmakers to elect him speaker so the House could start work on the president-elect's legislative priorities. And this was the thing. None of the people who were voting against Johnson posited an alternative to Johnson. None of them. None of them had somebody better in mind who's going to get the Republican caucus unified rather than Johnson, which means it was all a sort of bizarre attention-seeking move on the part of these particular Congress people. If you don't have a better alternative, then you are being obstructionist and useless within your own party. Well, here is Speaker Johnson taking the gavel.
This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the number one priority. Yes.
And again, the thing that Republicans want more than anything is get the priorities that Trump wants done. Well, this has betokened some interesting conversations about the strategy going forward for House Republicans. So there are basically 2 strategies on the table. There are 2 big issues that are going to come up this year in the Congress of the United States. Basically, because Republicans do not actually have a supermajority in the Senate, that means they have to use a process that is called reconciliation. Reconciliation can only be used on budgetary bills, on budgetary matters, which means typically it can only be used once or possibly at the most twice inside of a year. The big question for Republicans in the House and in the Senate was whether they were going to separate out 2 separate bills and vote on them separately over the course of the year. One was going to be a border bill that's going to attempt to maintain border security, increase border security, complete the building of the wall, for example, change the law where necessary in order to make it easier to deport illegal immigrants. That was possibility of bill number 1. Possibility of bill number 2 was the making permanent of the 2017 Trump tax cuts. And there are basically 2 possible strategies here. Again, one strategy would be to separate those 2 bills. In some ways, that might be better, and in some ways, it might be worse. The other strategy was to wrap them up into one giant bill. The problem with wrapping them up into one giant bill is more compromises are going to get cut in that giant bill than might be cut if you separated them out into 2 separate bills. Why? Well, because if you pile everything into one bill and you give that giant one bill on border matters and tax matters an up or down vote, there will be more crap in the crap sandwich. There just will be. It's like an omnibus package that includes tax matters and border matters. And this is something that many conservatives are concerned about. For example, the House Freedom Caucus is upset about all of that because it will take additional spending on the border in order to secure the border. The Trump tax cuts may have short-term lowering of federal revenue into the tax coffers. So how are you going to offset that in terms of the spending? And meanwhile, Republicans also would like to increase the defense budget in the face of a vastly aggressive China. So all of those things getting wrapped into one bill, it means that if it all gets wrapped in one bill and Trump says to the American body politic and to the constituents of all these Republicans, listen, the bill has a lot of stuff I don't like, but it has a lot of stuff I do like. I'm yes on the bill. Everybody else should be yes on the bill. There's going to be heavy pressure on Republicans to go yes on the bill, even if there's more crap included in the crap sandwich. The alternative, which is to separate the 2 bills, the border bill and the tax bill, is that you may get neither. It may be an opportunity for people to signal their discontent on matters regarding Donald Trump's approach to the border. If you're on the sort of left wing of the Republican Party, on tax matters, there's going to be some pretty serious battles inside the Republican Party with regard to the so-called SALT deductions, state and local tax deductions. So the 2017 tax cuts, one of the things that they did is they said that if you pay taxes in California or New York, that doesn't mean that you can deduct the taxes you paid on the state level against your federal taxable income, because it's effectively a sort of affirmative action program on taxes for blue states. Okay, so that got removed. But there are a lot of people, Republicans from New York and California, who would like to restore the SALT deductions in the tax code. Right? That's going to be an open battle. So strategically speaking, the question is, do you go for two purer and smaller bills, or do you go for one less pure, bigger, beautiful bill? So for Johnson, because he's working with such a slim majority, he would love one big, beautiful bill. He would love it. Again, the reason being because he wants to get everything that Trump wants. And so if your choices are get less of what Trump wants and less bad stuff, and get more of what Trump wants and more bad stuff, right? Those are the two choices. He prefers more of what Trump wants and probably a little bit more bad stuff, right? That's the nature of the bargain here. And there really is no third choice where you just get like all the great things that you want and none of the bad things that you don't want. That is not how it works with a majority this slim in the House and a pretty slim majority in the Senate as well. So Elon Musk, over the weekend, he went after Keir Starmer. And the reason he went after Keir Starmer is because there was a request that there be a federal investigation in Britain into a national investigation into these grooming gangs, a national inquiry. And Starmer's Labour government rejected that, instead pointing to a series of existing inquiries on the issue and a 2022 report whose findings are still being implemented. And Musk immediately went after Starmer, and he suggested that Starmer was complicit because Starmer, of course, was involved in the Crown Prosecution Service at the time that a lot of this was going on. He called him despicable and said he was, quote, deeply complicit in the mass in exchange for votes. And again, this is a party. This is, in fact, a party, the Labour Party, that has been complicit in the attempts, if not actually guilty of the attempts, to cover up crimes related to the failures of multiculturalism in Britain. Remember, I mean, it's Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, who's openly calling for the criminalization of quote-unquote Islamophobic speech. He's a member of the Labour government. Here he was this year.
One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. And, well, you can see the stats, you can see the numbers rising, particularly since October the 7th. Although we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that before October the 7th, this was all heading in the right direction. It's been far too high for far too long. Clearly, we need to just say over and over again, Islamophobia is intolerable.
That's Keir Starmer, by the way.
It can never, ever be justified. And we have to continue with a zero tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online, which I think needs tackling much more robustly than it is at the moment.
What I'm hoping, Keir, is your experience as a prosecutor means you'll be thinking about the strategy we can use to make sure we take action against those who break the law.
Okay, that is the most Orwellian crap I have ever heard. I mean, truly Orwellian in Great Britain. That's Keir Starmer, who is the current prime minister, talking to the mayor of London about criminalizing Islamophobia. What are the things you can do as a former prosecutor, says Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, to criminalize Islamophobia, which Keir Starmer says has risen dramatically in the aftermath of October 7th, which, as you will recall, was a mass Islamic terror attack on Jews. Hey, this is where the Labour Party is. You want to know why there's this massive right-wing backlash happening all over the globe, particularly with regard to immigration? This would be the reason, because mass migration has not been a boon to the West. Not in the modern era. Mass migration is a massive problem because it has been combined not with assimilation, not with economic growth, but with economic stagnation and non-assimilation. And it has been biased toward countries that are exporting people who have no interest in assimilating to Western values, and in fact, many of whom despise Western values. And if you say that sort of stuff out loud in the UK, apparently you get arrested. There's a better shot you'll get arrested in the UK for saying something quote unquote Islamophobic than apparently for white girls if you're a radical Muslim. That seems to be the logic over in the UK and has been for quite a while. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.